Well, howdy do, buckaroos. This is Joe Leydon of Cowboys and Indians magazine, and I'm in the CNI studio today to talk with Martin Whist, who is the production designer on a movie that puts the wild back in the Wild West, The Harder They Fall. Good afternoon, Martin.
Good afternoon. How you doing, sir?
Very fine. Want you to know that our readers have been, turning cartwheels and singing the praises of this fine film. And
that's great to hear.
And I'm looking over your credits, and I don't see too many westerns. And I'm just curious. I mean, I can understand maybe you sat down and watched a lot of old Doris Day and Rock Hudson movies before you started work on Down with Love. What did you reference for this film?
Absolutely nothing. Let's start there. I love Westerns. James loves Westerns. Grew up with them. I actually grew up in cattle country in central British Columbia. Grew up going to rodeos, the whole bit. So we had, I grew up with real live cowboys, and but nonetheless, when we started it, we both, on our first conversation, which was really the interview, which turned into just pretty much our first meeting because we got along so well, we both agreed and sort of banded together on the fact that we did not want to make a typical Western. We did not want to make a dusty old look for a Western. As much as we've loved all the classics, our visual approach was wanting to make something new and sort of a Western that hasn't really been seen before. So, and one that we would chuckle to each other, one that is not historically inaccurate, ... But so we took liberties, of course. Although, the color use and on the exterior of redwood was very dramatic and bold. But in the Victorian era, truly historically, in terms of color and adornment and ornamentation and architectural flourish, they were crazy. They did, everything. And it's very surprising, very creative era for architecture and design. And so, whereas that might not have been seen typically in a Western town at the time, it did exist, maybe on the East Coast and Boston and wherever in the bigger cities. So it's not as though this sort of approach didn't exist, but we just brought it into a region that it hasn't been seen before. And of course, bringing to light a completely African-American town gave us the opportunity to show a new town, a new look, because it hasn't been showcased before. So we wanted to really lean into that, and we wanted to make it new, like to the viewer, wanted to make it new. And just going back, it's not as though color didn't exist back in the day. It's just not what we're used to, not what we're programmed to see. We sort of, through all the Westerns, we haven't been shown that look. And so because we're coming in from a new angle, we thought we would present this as a fresh new town, and one that you're walking into present day, not as a gaze looking backwards, but you're right in it, fresh on the day, a completely new, prosperous, vibrant, energetic town. So all of these things drove the decisions for the looks, particularly of Redwood. That was our starting point for everything.
Well, there's definitely a touch of Sergio Leone throughout some of the
Sure.
film. In fact,
Of course.
I say in my review, it's sort of like a dream team combination of Sergio Leone, Spike Lee, and John Woo. Uh,
That's great. That's a great combination.
and
Yeah.
as you say, so many different influences. Stagecoach Mary's saloon show slash nightclub. I kept thinking that maybe you'd looked at Baz Luhrmann's Moulin Rouge a time or two before
Yeah.
putting that together.
I mean, yeah, Mary's particular was, I would say, well, absolutely with Baz Luhrmann and 100% with leaning into the extravagant. And I'd almost counter to say that Trudy's was really was the push in that look. Mary's had it as well, of course, but it was a little more, the tones were a little more typical of a saloon that people have seen, although it's flourished and with the big red curtain over her stage, and it was very theatrical. Um, that both saloons were fun to design, and I wanted to keep them looking different. But then to contrast Mary's with all those warm tones and brought in viridians and reds and to Trudy's, which was golds and blacks and this really gorgeous indigo blue coming through with the Blue Lady. So I like that you bring in Baz Luhrmann because the theatrical nature of these two interiors was important. Was we wanted to really lean into that, and particularly with James's music that he brought to everything. And so these very much were stage sets for performances.
Now, the first time I saw the film was on my big screen TV, and I jumped at the chance to see it on the movie screen here in Houston. Yeah. And one of the things that pushed me towards seeing it again, in addition to the fact that I love the film, but there are a couple of scenes I just wanted to see how they played with an audience. And I have to say, one of them, and I almost don't want to spoil the gag, the payoff, but when your characters ride into not just a white town, a really white town. And sure enough, I'm sitting in the theater. It's only a small group of critics, but I could hear in the background, okay, that person has caught it. And then there's a laugh over there. So, okay, that person has caught it. And then suddenly everybody's laughing. Who came up with that inspired idea?
Well, as a designer, you always want to say the director it's his idea. But let's say it was pretty collaborative on this one. As I was, in the script is written as just a white town with no visual description. And as I was doing my research, I love all monochromatic environments. I love monochromatic wardrobe. I just think there's something really gorgeous to it. And so as I was doing my research, I'm drawn to white on white imagery, and whether it's an interior or wardrobe, which fashion I drew from a lot. I put together this board and this presentation for James of the town, and it was all this, everything was white on white, white interior, white people, white horses, white kids, white this, white that. And he's loving it. He's loving the look of it. And I looked at him, I said, so yeah, like I'm thinking it's white. And he looks at me and goes, yeah, it's a white town. And I'm like, no, I mean, literally white everything. And he started ding. And he's like, absolutely. Without a hesitation, he jumped in. And then of course we did not hold back on that, as you saw. As soon as I made an illustration for it, James was so great. He was just like, that's what I want. That's it on the screen. I want that. And we brought into the illustration, we like did some of the wagon wheels in a yellow and an orange and a door in an orange and a green. And just to give it a little pop, just to make it give it a little life. And he liked that as well. So from that meeting, the illustration, the presentation, we just took off. And honestly, the final part of it was finding this crushed white pumice stone in the area. My construction coordinator found it, and because we were looking for a light ground covering, because it's dark brown or a red brown out there, which would just jar the whole thing. So we found this stone, and we brought it in by the truckload and covered the whole ground in white too. And that was just it. There was no hesitation, no holding back. And as you notice, the horses are white, like everything's white. And so I'm to what you described in your experience. When I went to the premiere, I hadn't seen the film, and so I didn't know how Maysville was going to be presented. And his little caption, Maysville, and then parentheses, it's a white town, overlaid this image, the audience, the whole place just erupted in laughter. And to me, as a designer, like, how much fun to get from my visual work. It's usually not really noticed that much, and it's imbued into the scenes. But as a designer, our goals generally are not to be noticed. We want to almost subconsciously be a part of the tone. And this was, of course, the opposite. And so to get that sort of visceral reaction from the viewer in the form of laughter was super rewarding. It was really, really neat. Yeah.
Now, you had an interruption during production because of COVID. We worried that, I hope they're going to get started again.
Oh, heck yeah. Absolutely. We had put a lot into the film at that point. We were literally 3 or 2 days away from shooting and starting to shoot in Redwood. So Redwood, all the exterior was done. We had some interiors to get done while they were shooting in the exterior, but those were only a matter of days, of weeks away of just finishing up the set dressing. So yeah, we had put a lot into it. And when everybody just went home, we wrapped the place up and left. We were very concerned, and everybody was invested in it and super excited about it, working on it and developing this really interesting look and this unique vision for a Western and everything that James was bringing. And it was just so exciting to be a part of. And at that time in the world, we had no idea that something this dramatic was even possible, that a global pandemic was a possibility that would completely shut us down without any, nobody knew. We didn't know when we were coming back, if we were coming back, what was the fate of everyone, let alone us on our film. So we were very concerned, and I do have to give big, tip of the hat to Netflix. They were very good at keeping everybody, paid and in the loop, and kept us on board for quite a while. And then we got back as soon as we could. And then they were very great at setting up all the protocols and safeties, and it was difficult getting through it. Our line producer, G. Mac Brown, he had a hard task because we went down, I think 8 times. Maybe I'm exaggerating, but it could have been. It was over 5 times from during the rest of the shooting where we'd have to go down for a number of days. So yeah, it was not easy to make this movie, and we ended in that following the end of 2020 in the December. That Maysville, actually, before the day of shooting, was covered in about an inch of snow. So we had to use heaters to get it all gone. And if you looked off the edge of the set, it was all, that Santa Fe area with the dusting of snow on it. We were all fighting snowstorms every morning. But anyways, yeah, so in terms of production, it was big. It was quite a process. It was difficult to make, but we got it done.
You've been very generous with your time, but we've got a couple more questions.
Okay.
One of them, looping back to your first conversation with the director. At what point did the light bulb go off over your head and you thought, oh yeah, this really, for many reasons, is not going to be your father's Western?
Yeah, right. That's well, very early on, honestly, with talking with James, he has an energy and an articulation to him that immediately well, first of all, I'd read the script, and in the script were particular music was called out at particular times. So as I was reading the script, I was able to look at something up or remember and go like, oh, okay. You could imagine that overlay on it. You're like, whoa, oh, this is going to be interesting. This is a unique take. And then talking to him as to how clear he was, then it just reinforced that. And I was like, oh, this is real. And then his confidence talking about the look and the color and not wanting it to be traditional. And it was very immediate. Like I say, we were talking for a matter of, 5 minutes, and the light bulb went off. And then it just became a conversation, a creative conversation rather than an interview.
Okay, finally, when you were reading the script, what were some of the scenes on paper that made you think, oh, now how am I going to visualize that?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think was, in one of a better term, the toughest nut to crack?
I would say, honestly, two parts. The number one, redwood exterior and the whole gunfight. But I also knew that would come together because it's a lot of movement. And when you're working with an environment, there's many ways to go about it. And I also knew it'd be a long road to get that figured out. And we needed a cinematographer to be a part of that conversation. But the one that was the toughest nut to crack was the mayor's mansion, because that didn't exist. We built that from the ground up, 2 stories, standing there in the middle of, this redwood town. And so when you're designing something like that, you design to the blocking of the scenes. Design is not just the look of the thing. You have to design the spatial relationships between how each scene plays out. This person needs to come here and they need to be that far apart. And oh, he needs to come down some stairs. So that's the second story. Oh, okay. And he needs to be upstairs. And then I was like, imagine if he's looking out over the town, and how fantastic would that be? And then, oh, at a different time of the movie, there's 2 guys need to come to the front and shoot out the front for the Rhett to catch up with this other scene. And Wiley needs to come in and throw the explosives and blow it up. So all of those, the blocking of all those different scenes needs to be able to take place in a set geography, a set layout, set architecture. So designing that, and I'm always I had to start very early in order to get the drafting done and in order to get to construction to build it. But of course, so these decisions need to happen very early, and I need to come up with my own movie, sometimes without a cinematographer, as to how this will lay out, and basically pitch it to James as, will, you know, does this all feel right? Because I got to start swinging hammers, you know, and then once it starts going up, you can't change it. So that's always one of the biggest challenges for a production designer when you're building something from ground up, from scratch, particularly something that's 2 stories tall in the middle of the wide open, you know, Santa Fe, you know, area, with all the elements on it during winter. And it's an exterior, complete exterior and complete interior, with a massive window on the 2nd floor that needs to come out in order for a cable cam to go through. So you get it. The ramifications and the ins and outs of designing the mayor's mansion in particular was easily the most challenging.
Well, you know, at the very end, and I don't want to give a spoiler here, but the door is left wide open for a sequel.
Yeah.
So I can only assume that maybe it's not at the top of your list of things to do, but maybe you're thinking about more sets for another visit to this universe.
Hey, listen, I'm at this point, I'm in the same shoes as you. I would love to. and I was at the end of that, watching that final scene, I was like, okay. Cool. Yeah.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
Bring it on, man. Sign me up, James.
Well, thank you very much for your time. And once again, congratulations on the film.
Thank you.
And hope to see you again.
All right. Thanks so much for your support. I really appreciate it.